You are not Terran.
Of course I am.
The way you speak?
Enough.
Please. Return to where you are from, Emperor. Should you fail to do what is expected of you, they will kill you.
This is my home. Now and forever. And I will make it what it needs to be.
So a few months back, we started this whole 23 weeks of Trek, and we had Lower Decks and Star Trek Discovery all in a row, and now we have only 3 weeks left. How crazy is that?
Say it's not so. Say it's not so.
I know. Oh, it's making me sad. I'm Dan Gunther. With me, as always, is Bruce Gibson. You're listening to Positively Trek, our Discovery review episode, and this week we're taking a look at Star Trek Discovery Season 3, Episode 10, Terra Firma Part 2. And yeah, after this episode, there's only 3 left. That kind of blows my mind.
Wait, I'm sorry. Terra Firma Part 2? There actually was a Part 2 after Part 1? I'm not used to that in Discovery. Sometimes we get a Part 1 and there's no Part 2. If I remember correctly, the premiere episode was That Hope Is You for the season. Part 1, it said. Part 1, but there's been no Part 2. I'm glad we're getting a Part 2 for this one, though.
Yeah, me too. I still think we'll get that Part 2 at some point. My money at this point is still on the first episode of Season 4. Or maybe there'll be a Short Trek episode, That Hope Is You Part 2. Maybe the Short Trek episode that details what Burnham was up to during that year. That'll be That Hope Is You Part 2. Oh my goodness. Okay, that's my new favorite theory.
Yes, I think that might be it. I don't know. Or how about this? This is something I hadn't even thought of before. What if we just got some special between seasons 3 and 4, not short tracks, but just a one-time movie special, That Hope Is You Part 2, and it's like a bonus thing in the summer between episodes. It's like a 2-hour event that shows her and Book's journey for a year. I don't know.
That would be pretty cool. I feel like that may be more on the outside of the possibilities, but I like the outside the box thinking. I really like that idea. That would be really, really cool.
Yeah, it would almost be like this, in-between movie until the next season starts.
Yeah, I would be all for that. That would be excellent. But that's not the Part 2 that we are actually supposed to be talking about today. So Terra Firma Part 2, this most recent episode, an actual Part 2, like you say, that follows immediately after Part 1. What a concept. Pretty crazy, but they did it. Discovery did it, so...
Yes, and thank goodness, because after Part 1, I definitely needed this Part 2.
Yeah, definitely. To start out with, and I should say we will be getting into spoilers, of course, right away. So if you haven't watched the episode, you may want to do that before listening. But right off the bat, I got to say, it answered more questions from Part 1 than I thought it would. There were some things in Part 1 that I thought they would leave as mysteries that would just be like, oh, maybe they'll pick that up at some other point. But no, I think this episode pretty succinctly answered a lot of the questions I had.
Yeah, I think so too. For me too. There's a lot of questions I had, and there's a lot of theories as to the direction I thought things would go in. And I was wondering if this was going to wrap up the Georgiou storyline in Discovery or not. And I wanted to see if this episode was going to do that too.
Well, we get the answer to that question for sure, and the other ones as well. So let's start at the beginning of the episode. It picks up, of course, right where Part 1 left off. Georgiou is seemingly in the mirror universe, back in time, back in the 23rd century. And the decision she made at the end of Part 1 was to spare the mirror Michael Burnham's life and set the mirror universe on a different course. And it seems that her mission is to create a new world, to remake this universe based on her experiences in what we call the Prime Universe. I guess it's not that surprising, but it really does show how much Georgiou has changed and how much she has been changed by her experiences with the Discovery crew and all of her experiences in the Prime universe. Were you surprised that that was kind of her goal, was to remake the mirror universe?
I was surprised by that. I'm glad that they went in that direction, and I have some ideas as to why I think they did that. Of course, they want to show character growth in her is definitely one reason, because when you come from the mirror universe and you're in what we know as our Prime universe, she is going to have some change in herself. There's nothing about this universe that wouldn't affect her. Yeah, I mean, just being around a crew like Discovery and see how this universe is, it is not as violent and destructive as the mirror universe. And so she's seeing a way that could be, the way things could have been. The thing I'm a little disappointed about is that I wanted to know more about her backstory of her childhood and how she got to be emperor. I want to hear more information about that, because we're not born evil. People in the mirror universe aren't born to be the opposite of what they are in the Prime universe. It's the effects of the environment that they're in that makes them who they are. And I just wonder what Georgiou was like when she was younger, what made her into what she was as an adult, as an emperor, and if she's regressing back to the way she was when she was younger, where maybe she did have more hope. But circumstances changed that. And now she realizes she can change the circumstances.
That's an interesting thought for sure, because I feel like this story makes Georgiou such an interesting character because, like you say, she was born into and molded by the mirror universe, and she still has all that. She's not a completely different person, but her exposure to these new ideas and different ways of doing things has changed her pretty fundamentally in that way. So in some ways, she's, I think, almost further along than someone who would just be born in the Prime universe, who kind of always knew peace and, all this stuff and just turned out that way. But she made an active choice to say that, no, this way is better, and I'm going to change for the better. I think that's really interesting. And to your point about her childhood story and stuff, we get another little reference to that story in this episode. And again, like you, I was kind of thinking like, oh, we're going to find out about this character from her past, San, who's mentioned in the novel Die Standing by John Jackson Miller. I thought we'd get more of that, but apparently they're saving that for her next series. It sounds like she seems to basically leave the show in this episode to go to Star Trek Section 31. We'll definitely get to that for sure.
Yeah, I definitely want to get to that. And before we do that, the other thing I want to point out is her relationship with Burnham. I think that's the other thing that motivates her to do what she needs to do, because Burnham is gone in the mirror universe. She had killed her, and now she's reunited with a different Burnham. And I think she also realizes how much she longs for the Burnham she knew. And she really realizes, Burnham really was a daughter to her, and it didn't have to turn out the way it did. She really didn't have to kill her. She has hopes that she could turn her daughter around. And now she's getting a second chance. So I think it's two things. It's one, as change the mirror universe to the way she's seeing things in the Prime universe, and then also have a second chance with her daughter, which she tries and tries and tries, but some things you can't change.
Yeah, and we definitely see her on that path to trying to break Burnham, as she puts it, because Burnham of the Mirror Universe and all the people of the Mirror Universe don't understand a language other than terror and fear, and so Georgiou's trying to harness those forces to bring Burnham to her side and rule with her at her side and have her help in this mission to change the mirror universe. Were you convinced? Like, did you think Burnham had changed and was loyal to Georgiou, or did you know that she was ultimately not loyal and going to turn on Georgiou?
I think I did think that maybe she did change or decided to follow Georgiou, but I still didn't trust her. I didn't necessarily think that she was faking it, but I thought maybe there'd be something that would break her or turn her back against Georgiou. but I didn't think it was in her plan to, I'll just pretend that I'm following you, Mother, and I agree with you, and I'm servient to you. As soon as your back is turned, I'm going to stab you. I didn't think that way. I just thought that she was broken down, but then something would happen later that would piss her off, and then she'd go after Georgiou again.
Yeah, I was suspicious of her, and at first I thought the episode was going to disappoint me because Georgiou wasn't suspicious of her. I thought like, oh no, Georgiou's going to get taken in and she's going to get betrayed. And she is betrayed ultimately by Michael, but I didn't give Georgiou enough credit. She does have, people keeping tabs on Michael, and she doesn't completely trust her and has kind of backups going. So the episode definitely didn't disappoint me there. I was like, oh, okay, she's got this covered.
Yeah, and that part didn't surprise me because as soon as Burnham points her phaser at Georgiou, I was like, oh, there we go. Dang it. I was hoping Burnham was honest and did come around to Georgiou's side. But as soon as that happened, I was like, I knew Georgiou probably isn't falling for this. She probably had a backup plan the whole time. At least that's what I was hoping. And sure enough, she did. I was like, thank goodness.
Yeah. And the look in Georgiou's eyes, of course, isn't surprise. It's just disappointment.
Yeah.
So the moment I saw that look, I was like, okay, she knew this was coming, or at least felt that this was a possibility that this was coming. So,
well, and then they killed each other in their fight, which I thought was symbolic too, because this is the opportunity where Georgiou's trying to get Burnham to come to her side, has failed at this yet again, and is ending up killing Burnham once again, which in essence kills her. Whether she lives or not, her soul is killed. It's died. She's not accomplishing what she wanted to on her second chance, and so it's ruined.
And before we get to that too, though, I want to talk a bit about part of the backup plan she has, because in this moment we see Saru and another Kelpian come in guns blazing. And the setup for this I thought was brilliant. The scene between Georgiou and Saru in the Mirror Universe, and I don't say this lightly, I think is one of the best acted scenes we've ever seen in all of Star Trek Discovery. And I think is Saru, I'd say both Michelle Yeoh and Doug Jones give their best performances of the entire series in this scene. I was completely blown away by the acting. And especially when you're speaking of Doug Jones, I don't say that lightly because he's an incredible actor, and so is Michelle Yeoh. So to say that this is, the best scene they've ever been in, I don't use that lightly. I don't just throw that around. Saru, for example, when he starts to kind of panic a little bit, he's like, you don't belong here. You're not from, you need to go back where you're from. They're going to kill you. Like, I feel that. And the connection he's made with Georgiou here, I thought was just absolutely beautiful.
I hadn't thought about this being one of the best acted scenes in Discovery. I remember really being moved and loving this scene, but I do agree with you. It is probably one of the best. I do remember watching this episode and thinking that this was Michelle Yeoh's strongest performance in Discovery throughout. Mm-hmm. I really enjoyed her performance, and Doug Jones too. And I mean, the whole cast I always have. But this really stood out to me with Michelle Yeoh. I was really buying her. There was just times where I thought, like, she really feels like she belongs in this part in the Mirror Universe. I think it's also because her character fits in more in the Mirror Universe than the Prime Universe. So because she fits so much well in that universe, it just comes across even better. And I feel like she can really play it to the heights of the character. But yeah, this scene is so great because at the same time, it's like, Saru feels loyal to her. He wants her to be the one that ends his life. He's looking to her. It's like she saved him. And at the same time, I think he worries maybe that if people are against her, they're going to be against him. And she's his hope too.
But at the same time, he kind of puts aside that worry to worry about her, right. Which is interesting. To say, you need to go back where you came from. They're going to kill you. Like, you can't. And he actually genuinely cares about her, which that kind of blew my mind. I just loved how easily and well that was communicated in that scene.
Which is so nice too, because he doesn't have anybody. He's cut off from anybody he would have cared about, and anybody he would have cared about may be gone, may have been killed. And he even mentions about brothers and parents and, have all gone and
his sister,
his sister, and, he's the only one left, and she's the only one that he could care for at this point.
So kind of the background of this too is he's about to go through his Vihari, which for Kelpians, both in our universe and the mirror universe, meant that they would be culled. That's when they have to be killed because they'll go insane or whatever. But Georgiou reveals to him that, no, lock yourself away, let the madness pass, you'll be fine and you'll be changed. The terror on his face when he realizes that, all my family and friends, they didn't have to go through this. Georgiou says to him, no, the way you get your vengeance is to tell others. So you overcome it by passing through Vihari, and then you get your revenge by telling other Kelpians this and raising everyone else up. I thought that was beautiful.
Yeah, I did too. And I like how she told the story, how she once knew of a Kelpian named Saru, who had served as a captain of a starship. And when she started telling that story, I thought, I know this is the mirror version of Saru, but does he not go by the name of Saru? Would that, I just was wondering how he was taking that. In the second watch, I was thinking that even more when she was saying it. It's like, is he hearing her tell a story about somebody named Saru that has the same name as him? Or is he thinking that she's telling a story about him, but what could have been? Or does he realize that she may be from another universe and talk about a different Saru?
Yeah, it could be. The first time we met him, of course, we know Burnham started calling him Saru, but it's a little unclear then as well, because Burnham says, I'm going to call you Saru. So it's kind of unclear. And I think he might have said something in that episode, like, what use would a slave have for a name or something like that. So it's unclear if he knows that or not.
So yeah, so now it's starting to make sense. Yeah, so he doesn't have a name. She's basically named him, and now he's finding out who she named him after. And so he looks at that Saru as that who he wants to be, like that. And in reality, he is that. He is Saru.
I don't know. I'd love to dig in deeper. We need another novel set in the mirror universe or something to see all these relationships and see how this all plays out. Because, yeah, I don't know. Did Georgiou actually alter the timeline? Did things get reset after she leaves? I don't know. Well, that's another question. But
yeah,
the first thing, before we get to that, I want to talk about reforming the mirror universe. So this is the third time now we've seen in Star Trek history, not chronologically speaking, but as far as TV shows coming out and us seeing it history, this is the third time we've seen somebody try to change the mirror universe based on the ideals of the Federation. And of course, the first one, Mirror, Mirror, Kirk gives Spock the inspiration, and we find out later in Deep Space Nine that he did reform the Empire, but now they've been taken over by the Klingons and Cardassians and Bajorans. Enterprise, we had T'Pol trying to use the example of the Federation and that kind of failing. And now we have Georgiou doing the same thing, but ultimately failing. Are these kind of reforms to the mirror universe just always kind of doomed to failure? Is it fundamental to that universe that this is the Federation just does not work there?
I don't know. Maybe. I guess you could look at it that way. I mean, also in my head, I often think that there's more than one mirror universe. And so sometimes I wonder if we're seeing different mirror universes. And to your point, did we even create a new one, a new mirror timeline with Georgiou's return and what happened after this episode? Did that universe continue on? I don't know.
That could be, yeah.
As mentioned in Mirror, Mirror, that it just takes one man to make a change. It's a lot of effort. And does the Federation work within the mirror universe? Probably not. It couldn't be just like the Federation we know, because the circumstances are so different. You couldn't change everything. It would be impossible.
That's a good point. That, like, I do wonder, because we know there's multiple timelines of the Prime universe. Once you start putting those labels on it, it kind of gets a little hard to follow. I guess there's not multiple Prime universes, but there's other universes that branched off from the Prime universe and became other timelines. So it could be multiple branches on the other side in the mirror universe as well. And yeah, I wonder if Georgiou's experience here, because we do find out that the way she traveled there was through the Guardian of Forever. And we know that timelines change when you travel through the Guardian of Forever. So it's sort of all in her head, but also sort of not, because as she appears on this planet and checks her little Fitbit that she got from Michael in the last episode, it has 3 months worth of medical entries, medical diagnostics of her there. So she was actually there actually experienced that.
So yeah, I think a new timeline was created. I really do. I mean, we could get a comic series or a novel that takes place in that timeline of what happened afterwards. I mean, that's entirely possible. And without going too far off the topic of this episode, but the way I look at timelines, and this is just the way I look at it, is I look at each timeline as being like a string. But if you take a string, you'll notice that the string is made up of several threads. So I look at timelines as the same way. So when we say a prime timeline or the mirror timeline or the Kelvin timeline, I picture it all as the same timeline, but then there's microscopic timelines within that timeline where they're the threads of the timeline, so that the timelines are so similar that they're so close together that they're almost the same, but just slightly different. Because if you took a string and you unraveled all the threads would look the same, but there are slight differences. So when I say like the Kelvin timeline, I also think of the Kelvin timeline as there's different versions of that timeline, but it's still contained within that timeline as a whole, but is just a different thread of that line. If that makes any sense. That makes
sense. Yeah, and that's kind of what we see in Parallels,
yes.
The TNG Season 7 episode as well, where there's trillions of different realities that are just a little bit different from the ones around it. So yeah, that makes sense for sure.
Yeah, so Parallels is a perfect example of how I think about the timelines. Yep.
So speaking of Georgiou reappearing on the planet that she and Burnham beamed down to in the last episode, we find out, of course, as I've already said, the mechanism of her travel back in time through the doorway was in fact the Guardian of Forever, and Carl is the personification, I guess, of the Guardian of Forever. So what did you think of this reveal in this episode? And specifically the kind of, I don't know, just the booming voice, the I am the Guardian of Forever. I loved it, but I'm curious what you thought. I'm just like giddy. I thought that was great.
Yeah, I love it too. I mean, actually, I've only watched the episode twice now since our recording here. And each time, especially the second time, I almost like giggle a little when that booming voice comes in. Not because I think it's funny, but at the same time I kind of do, because you just see that man there, and I never pictured that voice coming out of a guy standing there with a hat, you know. It's kind of funny in a lot of ways. And then when you see the door explode and you see the little fragments of wood, the little splinters, and then it zoom comes in and we see the Guardian of Forever like we know it. I mean, it is, I don't want to say fan service, but that's how there's kind of this fan service that goes on for me. You know, it's like, oh, I love this. But I will say at the same time, I know this is one theory that you had about, you know, this gentleman, Carl, being the Guardian of Forever. And of course, there's been other theories out there about, you know, could it be Q or something? I was really, in a lot of ways, hoping that it would be something unique. You know, I don't want to keep going back to the well of what has been in other Star Trek series all the time. But I do have to say, when it happened, I was just like, oh boy, this is so cool. I love it. Yes, yes.
Yeah, I loved it personally. I thought it was terrific. For me, my favorite part of it all, though, like the revelation and all that, was interesting and fun. I do like, of course, that Burnham is like, what's a Guardian of Forever? Like, I like that it's not, you know, that was meaningful for us, but it's not necessarily for them. They're just like, oh, what's this? And he explains like a time portal to other times, other dimensions, and all this stuff, just like the Guardian did in City on the Edge of Forever. But his kind of explanation for what has happened in the meantime, the temporal wars, and how all these people were using him to kill other people. And I got this real sense of heartbreak from him that, you know, the people of the galaxy who are so much younger, like children to him, basically, and they're using him to kill other people, and how much that affected him, and he had to hide himself away and move to a different place and all that kind of stuff. I loved that. I really enjoyed that aspect of it, that kind of not just relying on the old touchstone, but building new canon for it and saying where it has come since then and kind of giving an explanation for why it's in a different place and all that sort of stuff. I really thought that was well thought out.
Yeah, I did too, because when the theory of could this be the Guardian of Forever, I thought, well, it's not on the same planet. And I thought, unless this is another Guardian, there may be multiple ones out there. But then I was like, but the spear data only pointed to this one. And so did the other Guardians, were they destroyed if there's multiple? And the original one that we know of, is it gone? I mean, this is before we got the reveal, and it was when it was the theory. Then when it's revealed that this is the Guardian of Forever, my next thought is, but this isn't the planet. I mean, it's not. And then that explanation of the temporal Cold Wars was just like, oh my gosh. He had to move. He had to go into hiding. Like, yeah, because he was going to be used and abused. Like, this created an interesting backstory to the Guardian Forever. The Guardian Forever was created, or assumed was created, by some alien race, thousands of years ago or whatever. And it's like, we don't even know that backstory.
Billions of years ago, if City of the Edge of Forever is to be believed.
Yeah. And so when I see Carl, and I can see that the Guardian can appear and disappear, and of course now we know it can travel. What do we not know about the Guardian Forever? I'm not talking about necessarily just who built the Guardian Forever, but also what abilities does it have in representing itself? Like, did the device evolve into what we see now, or did it always have that capability to appear and disappear and travel and to represent itself in a human form or other forms?
I kind of wonder if that ability is related to time manipulation. Like, if it has the ability to manipulate time, it could change something in the past that makes it move to this other planet or something. You know what I mean? Like, if you have power over every timeline, you have the power to pretty much do whatever you want. So I kind of like that they leave it up to the imagination a little bit there. That, I don't know how he did this, but he's already been shown to be very, very powerful as far as affecting past timelines and stuff. So, if you can do that, you can probably manipulate it so that any shape of whatever in the future you can imagine, you can make happen.
Yeah, because it really puts a whole new dynamic to this possibility of the Guardian Forever, because now, as Star Trek fans, we can be watching something Star Trek, and there's a situation where, if they can only go back in time, and the Guardian just appears in front of them, right? Because now we know he's not stationary in one place. He can travel. He can appear and disappear. Not necessarily maybe like Q does, but, if they're on another planet, the Guardian could show up, possibly.
Yeah, you never know. Speaking of the Guardian, of course, Georgiou has discovered these things about her and been weighed, according to the Guardian, and judged, sort of thing. But her fundamental problem still exists. She's still in a place and time that is alien to her cells in her body, so she's being torn apart. But the Guardian gives her an out, a passageway to a time when the Mirror Universe and the Prime Universe were more aligned, apparently. My immediate thought, of course, is this is back to the 23rd century where she came from, but it could be something else. We don't know. I'm really curious to see where this all goes, but did it not just feel like really obvious that he's like, and I don't mean this in a bad way, I just thought it was funny. It was almost like Carl was standing there saying like, you're going to be going to a new place and a new time with new adventures, and you'll save lots of people. Coming this fall on CBS, the all-new series starring you as Philippa. It just felt like he was introducing this new series, a new situation she would go to. Again, I'm not faulting it. I thought it was really funny, but it totally felt like this was like the presentation to CBS shareholders saying like, coming this fall, this new series starring Michelle Yeoh. Step through here and you'll be on your way.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah, I mean, actually, I felt a little like that throughout this episode and the prior one, because I had a feeling that this was going to be the resolution of how we get Georgiou into a Section 31 series. And so these two episodes were supposed to somehow bridge her from Discovery to that new series. There's a lot of character development in Georgiou in her change. And it's mentioned several times by Burnham. You have changed. You have changed. And I thought this is good because wondering how Georgiou would lead a Section 31 series as a mere emperor is a little disturbing. But now if we go into the series knowing, oh yeah, she's from the Mirror Universe, but she's changed. Not 100% change. She's still from the Mirror Universe. She still was an emperor. She's still a badass in so many ways. But she's more sympathetic. She has changed. She'll continue to change. So I can see her leading a Section 31 series. But I felt the whole episode was building up towards that because we've heard about this new series coming up. So yes, when the Guardian is saying that, I'm feeling like, okay, this is that cherry on top of the sundae that we got of building to this moment, you know?
Mm-hmm. And the other thing that kind of made me feel that way a little bit was when Georgiou brings up the backstory that we've kind of alluded to, when she says, you know, I had a childhood friend, Son. I wish I could have told you about him. And Burnham says, tell the new people that you're about to meet.
Right. Tell the new cast.
Yeah. Tell the new cast that you're about to have this show with. That's for them. You're no longer on Discovery.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this answers the questions that we've been asking for a while. When they traveled into the future, when Discovery went to this future, we were like, wait, what about Georgiou? She's supposed to be in a Section 31 series. Is that still happening? And if it is, she's got to travel back in the past. Maybe she takes the Discovery and goes back into the past with the Discovery and leaves it somewhere in the nebula. And that's why we see what we see in Calypso. And, you know, well, we can scratch a lot of that out.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
that was completely wrong.
Right. But I will say, I love this episode, but here's the part I didn't like. And it's not that they did anything wrong in the episode. It was just a disappointment. When she walked through the Guardian, I was just screaming inside of, show me where she goes. Please show me where she goes. And they didn't. And I waited into the credits and afterwards just to see if they would show me where she goes because I was dying to know. I just wanted 10 seconds. That's it. Just to show me. And this is what it was in my mind. I pictured her showing up somewhere where she's disoriented, doesn't know where she was. She sees a woman walks by, taps her on the shoulder, and she says, excuse me, where am I? And Captain Kira Nerys turns around and says, you're on Deep Space Nine.
What?
That's what was in my head.
That's cool. You know, when you were saying the one thing that I wished I had seen, I didn't think that's where you were going, although I absolutely agree with you. I would have loved to have seen that. We're going to have to wait to see where she ends up, unfortunately. I thought you were going to say, I really wanted her to do a little hop jump through the Guardian just like Kirk and Spock did, because that's what I was thinking.
I was waiting for that. I was like, is she gonna hop jump in or just walk in? I was like really waiting to see how they were gonna do that. Yeah.
Just do the little slow motion skip into the portal like in City on the Edge of Forever.
Yeah.
That's what I wanted to see.
Yeah, but honestly, without getting too into this, I really believe that we will not see her appear in the Pike timeline 23rd century where she was before. I think we're going to see her in the 24th century. Well, I think it's either going to be in the 24th century, and that's why I was thinking maybe she'll show up on Deep Space Nine, or sometime after that in the 25th century, but I don't think they'll go there. Or possibly show up in the time frame of Star Trek Enterprise and touch on the Romulan Wars.
Yeah, and the beginnings of Section 31 or something like that. That's
right.
It's interesting. I do remember that interview where they said that Section 31 takes place in a surprising place and time. So I'm still, I don't know where that will be. I don't think the answer will be as simple as back where she came from as well either. So I don't know.
I also wonder if they'll put it between the 23rd, 24th century series in that gap, which we know in the novels is the Lost Years or the Lost Era. And so I wonder if, because that will give them a chance to fill in those gaps.
Yeah, that would be pretty cool. Well, we've talked mostly about Georgiou's stuff in this episode, which is definitely the bulk of the episode, but there are some other things that are happening that I do want to touch on briefly. So they're still on the Discovery in the Prime timeline trying to get in touch with the Kelpian ship and get in through the back door of their computer systems and stuff. And Book ends up kind of helping out by providing some emerald chain technology that allows them to boost subspace signals or something like that, saying that, Saru said to make himself useful, and that's what he did. Saru kind of is a little trepidatious about using this tech, but ultimately gives it the go-ahead because it seems to be working. However, when he gets in contact with Admiral Vance, Vance is a little more skeptical and is kind of questioning this use of the technology and the use of Book being, not somebody who's following Starfleet protocol. What did you think of this whole part of the story?
I feel like this question is leading me to where do we think things are going to end up with Book on the ship? Maybe that's not the intention, but that's what it feels like in some ways to me. But I feel like this is really just saying that Vance is trying to mentor Saru and not so much not trust or worry necessarily that much about what Book is doing, but is just worrying a little bit if Saru knows how to make the right decisions. And it's not that Saru can't be a good captain, but he's a new captain, and he's a new captain in a new Starfleet in a different time period. So in a lot of ways, I feel like Vance has to kind of babysit Saru a little, but babysit is the wrong word. I think what really is kind of mentoring him. So I think Book is being used as also first of all, I think Book is doing all this because they need his character to do something. They want to keep his character in the show. But the second thing is I think that the character's being used because it's a way to challenge Saru in his command decisions as captain and allow that relationship of Vance and Saru to develop so that Vance can really mentor Saru so we see if Saru's making the right decisions or not. Then there's the other theory in my head of, well, are we going to see Saru fail at being a captain in some ways and then Burnham step up into the captain role based on what Georgiou says before she steps through the Guardian about, Saru's a good captain, but you are more than what you think.
Yeah, I have a lot of thoughts. So the Georgiou thing, absolutely. And I also thought that was an interesting bookend to her character, even though she's not the same character. But when we first see Georgiou at the start of the series, she's saying to Michael, it's time for you to be a captain. I'm going to, recommend that you get your own command. And then the leaving of the character, and again, different character, but Michelle Yeoh's Georgiou still, with those parting words that, you're more than you seem. And the captaincy is something, basically she's saying, should be in your future. You're worthy of that. So yeah, I'm curious. The other thing she says, of course, is this world, this time right now is more Terran than you're used to.
Oh, yeah.
So this feeds into, and I'm still not convinced that Starfleet and the Federation aren't going to be the bad guys somehow in this season. I think that could still happen, which leads me to Vance and this scene with Saru. Now, the last episode, I saw it as a really nice bit of leadership lessons between Vance and Saru, and I thought that was really good. He kind of overturns Saru's decision, but says, like, this is why, and I think you made a slight mistake here. Here's where I think you could improve, and that sort of thing. And it felt really mentoring. This episode, the flip side of that, he's questioning Saru's decisions here and that sort of thing. And Saru, of course, to be fair, doesn't inform Vance right away of the Kelpian ship and holds that, without reporting it for his own reasons. And Vance kind of calls him on that. To me, it feels more like Vance is micromanaging Saru a little bit here and not giving him the trust I think he needs to kind of make the decisions. I could be misreading that, but it felt a little bit more sinister isn't the right word, but like it felt a little bit more manipulative this time around than the last time, if that makes sense. And now I'm starting to question Vance because that scene paired with what Georgiou said has really kind of set off some alarms in my head.
Yeah, I can see that for sure. I mean, the jury's still out on Vance, but for me, I'm leaning more on the side that he's good than bad in these situations. And I think a lot of that has to do is I'm hopeful because if we're into this future, we know what the Federation and Starfleet have been through. And I really would hope that the leadership of Starfleet isn't bad. And I hope that whatever Starfleet did wasn't necessarily something that was on purpose. Because now you get to a thing where it's like, okay, so Starfleet in the future just becomes corrupt. It's something that ended up failing. I hope not to think that that's what happens, but I see where you're getting, for sure. I mean, I get some of that feeling too. But I guess I'm just on the side of thinking that the writers might not want to go that direction with Vance, but I don't know. I feel like it really could go either way. I definitely see what you're saying.
Yeah. Maybe there's a different Starfleet in the Federation out there who are actually the good guys, and these are like pretenders or something. I don't know.
Yeah, but also I think about how Vance is, again, put yourself in his situation and where Starfleet is now and what's been happening. And time travel is not allowed. He knows what's happened through time travel with the temporal wars. And now all of a sudden the ship from the past shows up. He thinks they're good people. He's starting to trust them, but not fully trust them. And you've got a new captain on the ship who's new to being a captain. And again, he's in a different timeline. And I think he is still questioning and doesn't fully trust Saru yet.
Yeah, no, I definitely see that as the case for sure. All I'm saying is I had alarms going off in this episode. I'm not coming up with a conclusion one way or the other. I hope Vance and the Federation are still on the side of the Angels, but I don't know. They might not be.
But yeah, you need to be concerned of that comment that Georgiou made about this is more Terran than we think. So it kind of makes you wonder. Yeah. You know?
Yeah. Somebody made a comment on either Facebook or somewhere, and it really oh, that's a good point. They said, even after all the experiences this crew has had with Lorca, they're still too trusting. They still are a little bit too trusting. And I'm like, oh, that's a good point. They could be burned. Burned the burn. Yes. No. Oh, there we go.
There's the pun. But that actually leads to what I was going to say earlier, which I've said earlier in the season, that I wonder if the Federation did cause the burn, but maybe it was more of an accident, but they're covering it up. So, it does make me wonder if there's some cover up going on.
Yeah, that could be for sure. Well, one last thing that I kind of want to touch on, of course, is this goodbye scene to Georgiou. We get the crew kind of toasting the character. There's some touching goodbyes here. I really liked Saru's toast, and I especially, of course, liked Burnham's toast. I think they're very genuine. The other crew members, I'm not as convinced of their respect and liking of Georgiou, just because, if we look at the history of the character on the ship, she never really interacted with a lot of people. And when she did, it was in a very antagonistic way. So I can get the tongue in cheek, oh man, the way she walked, she was hot stuff kind of thing. But at the same time, maybe this is just me, but I'm curious, did you feel more like they were toasting Michelle Yeoh and her place on the show than they were toasting this particular Mirror Georgiou's character? That's kind of the impression I got.
Yes. Yeah, I did get that impression. I did feel that way, that it was more of a toast to Michelle Yeoh. But to your point, in universe, and no, actually, let me go back to that. Yes, it definitely is a toast to Michelle Yeoh. I really think that's why that scene was in there. I think that's why the writers did that. I think the actors were channeling that and their feelings of Michelle Yeoh into that scene. So definitely, yeah, I think that's fine and that's appropriate. But in universe, I did think, well, it's kind of odd to see some of these crew members toasting Georgiou oh, yeah, wasn't she great and wonderful and I'm going to miss her? And I thought, really? Do you guys really feel that way about her? But then I thought, you know what? I've been in situations where I've been at work where I know there's employees that didn't like maybe somebody there, a boss or whatever, and thought that person was a jerk and said, I'm so glad that person's leaving. And then you go to the going away party and they give a toast. Oh, you're going to be missed. And you were always so good to us, blah, blah, blah. And you're like, really? You don't really feel that way. You're just doing that for show. I mean, maybe you feel that a little, but you're exaggerating it because you're not going to stand up and give a toast at the going away party and go, no, that guy was a jerk.
Yeah, this is what I'm saying. I felt like some of those were definitely not genuine, which is fine in universe. I could absolutely see that happening. But I'm like, I don't think Detmer was too sad to see Georgiou go. I don't think Reno was too sad to see her backside as she leaves. You know?
I mean, maybe a little.
It's fine.
Maybe they are a little, and that they're touching on that part of them that there were some things they liked about her and some things they respected, and yeah, they are going to kind of miss her. But for the most part, probably not too much.
Yeah, exactly. But as a goodbye to Michelle Yeoh from the show, who was there from the very beginning, from the very first episode of season 1, I think it's touching, and it was a good scene for that on that level for sure.
Yeah, I really hope to see this character back with the Discovery crew at some point, but I don't think we'll ever see that happen.
I don't think so. Yeah, maybe back in the day, if Sweeps Week were still a thing. There'll
Yeah.
be like that special episode. Oh my goodness, she's back or something. But I think they're far enough removed from each other now. It's probably never going to happen again.
Unless there's some flashback scene.
Yeah, exactly. One final thing that I just want to briefly touch on, the return of Jett Reno, who's been missing for a few episodes. Man, was it great to see Tig Notaro back in that role, even just for a few seconds, chomping on her licorice in the engineering bay and being all snarky and cranky. Oh, I missed her. She's just a guest star. She's not a regular. Any Tig Notaro as Jett Reno we get, I'm absolutely totally happy with. So it was really, really nice to see her returned here.
Yeah, I like when Stamets is like, where have you been? I haven't seen you in a while,
That was great.
Like she's been hiding somewhere on the ship. I don't know if it was the Pod Directive podcast or I don't know, or Ready Room or somewhere else, but I remember her saying that she goes to the set, she's there for like a couple weeks and then she's gone for a while and then she comes back because she's not a regular character. She's not part of the main cast. So I just assumed that, she had off for a few weeks and now she's back. And so we're just going to make a joke of, hey, where have you been? Haven't seen you in a while situation. But it is good to see her. I mean, she just adds that little spice to the show, and it's a spice that we need because we're not going to get with Georgiou anymore.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So we need that little bit of spice in the cast. And, the other thing, it's like, I wish she would have done like when Stamets walked up and said, hey, how come I haven't seen you in a while? I wish she would have said, because I haven't been on the call sheet for the last few weeks.
I want to see that outtake. I bet you that exists.
Could be.
So final thoughts and maybe a rating for Terra Firma Part 2 and anything that we haven't mentioned.
So yeah, this episode, I loved it. I love both parts, part 1 and 2. I haven't watched them one after the other in a row and one sitting, which I'd like to do sometime. But yeah, I love this. I loved the send-off of Georgiou. I think if they were going to do a send-off, I'm glad it's not just a simple, she got in a shuttlecraft and found a time portal and went back in the past because she didn't want to be here anymore. I didn't want to be like a simple thing like that just so she can get on the Section 31 show. And I like the development of the character. I like that she's more sympathetic. She now sees that there's different ways to do things, that she has changed. Burnham still scares me to death in the Mirror Universe. She is so evil, just so played well by Sonequa Martin Green. That woman can play anything that you throw at her. Just amazing. And just knowing that the cast enjoys being in the Mirror Universe and seeing the Mirror Universe again. And yeah, the Guardian of Forever. I mean, come on. You can't help but just love seeing that. And just Carl and the whole thing. That's just not that device that's there. We've evolved the Guardian Forever into something a little more interesting and a little more dimension to it. So it gets me questioning things. So all these things, I would say, I'm giving this 5 out of 5 Mirror Universe stabbings into Burnham.
Yikes. I love it. Yeah. No, I absolutely agree on pretty much every point. I loved this 2-parter. It feels almost like a bit of an extended break from the main main story.
That's
like
a good
we
point.
kind of get bookended by the main story at the front of the first episode and the end of the second episode. But yeah, it's just like a little vacation from the main Discovery storyline, which is fine. And I think it was a great necessary thing for Georgiou's character. I'm more excited now for the Section 31 series than I ever was before.
Me too.
I have to admit, I was kind of like, I don't know. Like, I'll watch it, of course, but it's not something I'm really looking forward to. But now I want to know where she ended up. I want to know who these people are she's going to be working with and how this experience has informed her character and changed her. I want to see that all play out. And I'm really excited for that. So kudos to the writers of these episodes for doing that and making me excited for their next project, I guess. So good episode. The Guardian of Forever, of course, was a really great fan woohoo moment. And it feels like in various franchises this week, we've gotten a lot of really big fan excited moments. And I don't know how this one stacks up against the other ones from other Star whatever franchises, but we'll leave that for people out there to decide. But yeah, top marks for this episode. I'm going to give it I think one big booming "I am the guardian of forever" proclamation, which makes me go, oh my God. So, yeah.
I still think that when we see Georgiou pop up in the Section 31 series, it's going to start on Deep Space Nine, because that's where Section 31 started in the Star Trek franchise.
Interesting.
But a future Deep Space Nine. I'm not talking within the 7 years of the series, but that's why I said earlier, a Captain Kira Nerys, you know.
Okay. All right. Bring back Nana Visitor. I would be all for that. That would be great.
It could be during the time of Star Trek Picard.
All right. Would you be willing to put money on it?
Not on Kira, maybe, but on the fact that she will appear on Deep Space Nine on the space station. Yes, I would put money on that.
Oh, wow. Okay. Let's bet 15 quatlus.
That
then,
works.
Which is the price of one Star Dispatch newspaper, apparently. So
I can afford that.
Awesome. Well, when you're not paying me my 15 quatlus, when it turns out that she's nowhere near Deep Space Nine, where can we find you online?
You can find me on Twitter at Admiral_Rex. You know what? I'm like 30 some followers away from hitting 1,000 followers.
Ooh.
And so I'd love to see myself break into the thousands. It's just taken about 10 years to do. But
that's cool.
Anyway, so yeah, follow me there. You can follow me on Instagram at Admiral Rex, no underscore. And of course, I'm occasionally on the Star Wars Report podcast.
Excellent. And you can find me on Twitter. I'm at Kertrats, KERTRATS, youtube.com/Kertrats Productions. You can follow the show on Twitter at Positively Trek, and also find the show on Facebook. Find our Positively Trek discussion group. Just search for Positively Trek, and Bruce or I will let you into the group. Just answer some questions and agree to the rules. Well, thank you all so much for listening this week. 3 more episodes of Discovery to come. Very excited, but also very sad that the season is ending soon, but we'll be here after the season to talk about all things Star Trek, so no worries on that front. See you next time. Until then, as always, stay positive.